Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share insights on what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fumey, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the CEO of Gideon Math and Reading Centers, Stephanie Coppedge. Stephanie, how are you today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being on the show. I appreciate it. Many people know they're in franchising or familiar with Gideon Math and Reading Centers. You guys have been around a long time. Why don't you share with the audience here, though, kind of the origin of the company, how it started? I understand your mom, Wendy's the founder of the company.
Yes, my mom was with another brand in the industry, and we just felt really led as a family to start our own brand and start our own company, really for the purposes of going independent, not for franchising. But then that's kind of where we ended up, obviously, is franchising. So just kind of wanted to do our own thing. You know, it's after school math and reading centers for children, age 4 to 12. And there's a lot of interesting ideas around that, you know,
Sure.
And so we wanted to do our own thing with it.
So mom started the company, I guess your founder was technically 2004, right? Mm-hmm. And you were involved at that time. Mom was the founder, but you were working for mom at the time. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, what was the, obviously the concept was born out of, we want to do something independent, but I assume also that mom must have seen something where that you wanted to do something different. And there's so many different companies, franchise and not, that are in the tutoring and education space. What do you think was sort of the foundation for you guys on how you wanted to be different from those that are already out there?
We really wanted to keep a low student to teacher ratio. So we try to keep it around 3 to 1. And we wanted to do some more development in like math word problems and grammar and phonics. So it wasn't like a huge left turn, I would say, from what some other people are doing, but it was some tweaking of it and keeping it a certain way versus going into a larger scale system of larger student to teacher ratios. We wanted to keep those small and keep them where we could really be hands-on with the children.
I think that's great. And obviously the curriculum was so important to you all. You pointed out to me before we started the show that you guys have been around for quite a while, starting in 2004. You didn't franchise till 2012 because you really wanted to get the curriculum down right.
Yes, that was a huge focus.
Yeah. Expand on that. What does getting the curriculum down right look like?
Well, it's doing a ton of research about what actually works with most children, as opposed to just doing something the fastest way and getting it done. We really like to be very efficient and make sure we're actually getting mastery. We want to have a lot of integrity with our service, that this is going to get your child where you need them to go, as opposed to we're just some worksheets that we just happen to be kind of organized, in a learning center. Because you can get those for free,
right,
off the internet. You don't even need me. You're overpaying if that's all you're looking for. So we want to make sure that we're teaching things step by step, things like that.
I was reading on a page on your website, and I love how you said Gideon Math and Reading builds confidence to make school and beyond easy for your child.
Yes.
Pointed out easy. That's probably obviously the most important part, right? Is we want kids to want to learn. Yeah. But we want to feel like they can really master it so that they have confidence. Because I think at the end of the day, you're really in the confidence business, are you not?
Yes, that's exactly it. The building confidence is the internal feeling that I want them to have, because they'll always encounter a new problem that I haven't maybe shown them how to do yet, within the curriculum. But they know their skill set is built so that they can tackle the next thing and the next thing. And then if they want to go on to, engineering in college, it's no big deal. They're ready for the next thing to tackle. So that's kind of the idea. Yeah, it's just they can keep going into whatever they dream to do.
Yeah, you're really trying to set a really strong foundation for the kids. What's the age range for your typical student?
So typically 4 to 12. We do have some older kids, and we have had the occasional 3-year-old, kind of depending on if they're able to do it. But 4 to 12 is our bread and butter.
Okay. And so you franchised in 2012. And if I have the stats down right here, you've got 22 franchises open. You've got your one company owned location in Texas, in 5 states, right? Texas, Florida, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Arkansas, if I remember correctly. If you would share with me sort of the franchise journey, because so much of our audience are actually their fellow emerging founders and folks interested in maybe getting involved in a franchise. And so I'd love to really, if I can get kind of a peek into the beginning, what made mom decide, hey, we're going to franchise this concept? And obviously you were there at the time. So this must have been this was a huge decision because you had been around for quite a long time before you franchised the company.
So we had licensed a few centers here and there, and we had a bit of a brand name in the Dallas area. But some of the licensees were going a little bit of a different direction, and we wanted the name Gideon Math and Reading to mean something. So we decided, well, we better go on and start franchising. We actually really did not want to franchise. This was more of a necessity to protect the brand name.
Right.
Than a strong desire to go that route, because it's a lot of work, when you get started. And so we wanted to make sure that when we were doing it, that we were going to do it right. But that was really what it was. It was just time to make sure the brand name was protected. And so that was the impetus.
Sure. Franchising is not for everybody, and we know that, right?
No.
So I'm curious, let's protect the innocent here for a moment. And I know that your mom was actually a franchisee of another brand before you guys started this company. What do you think was the hesitation to franchise and to go that licensing route? Because I think it's great for our audience. Again, fellow founders are hearing this. Maybe they're thinking of even franchising their company. To hear from a fellow CEO on what kind of the mind of what it was like, I think is real important.
We wanted to have a really simple business model when we first started. We were like a publisher of our booklets, the student booklets. So people purchased what they needed, and we didn't have to go into all the ways to tell people how to run the business. She was part of a system that sometimes, every system probably, I don't even want to say just this one, had some disgruntled people. And so she heard that disgruntlement, disgruntled comments. And we wanted to avoid some of that, of feeling like what you're paying in royalty is not what you're getting back and all that kind of stuff. We really didn't want to go that route. And so we wanted to just be publishers, just stick to a very simple model. But in order to be a good franchisor, we realized, once we switched to franchising, we realized, we're going to have to change things a little bit. But that was the original idea, was just to have a low-key business model that didn't require a lot of control over other people.
But as you came to find out, franchising was the better model for you over licensing. Because ultimately, you really did need to be able to instill those controls to protect the brand, right?
Absolutely. But we had some licensees, honestly, going a little rogue.
Sure.
And they frankly had the license to do that,
No pun intended.
So we needed, what Gideon Math and Reading meant was going to change center to center if we didn't go franchising. And so we needed to lock that down. We hadn't really thought of, protecting the brand when we first started. We were just kind of there to educate kids. You want to do it too, here you go. We were really laid back about it. But we just got a lot more intentional with what we were doing by 2012.
I had the same passing thought, though, about licensing originally. I started running an adult men's softball league in Long Island. And I thought, I'm going to expand my sports programs around the country. And I thought it might be beneficial for people to run their own company under their own local name, because I thought maybe having that local name would have a greater impact. And then as I started looking into things further and becoming really a student of franchising, like in the late 90s, I came to find that there was far greater disadvantages of giving just that licensing. And I was giving up way too much. And maybe part of it was, truthfully, was fear of going into franchising, because it sounded at the time to me big and scary in the late 90s.
Oh, yeah. It is hard.
It is. It's not easy, of course, because suddenly when you're a franchisor, I think you start thinking about your franchisees as, I'm responsible for these people. Which is different than just licensing out. You're like, I'm licensing this out, go out and do it. But we give up a lot as a franchisor, or I should say as a licensor. We're giving up a ton. And forget for a second, we're giving up the protecting the brand. On top of that, we're really giving up the ability to have uh, long-term growth and really wealth for everyone that's involved, not just the franchisees, but for the franchisor, but just licensing. It's almost like I'm not just a proponent for franchising. I really think that it needs to fit your model. But if you think you're going to license because it's the cheaper, faster way of doing it, you're probably doing it it's the wrong decision. It's the wrong answer if that's your question.
It's the easy way out. You know, that's how we saw it too. It's like, oh, let's just do this. This is the easy way. We don't have to go through the, get a franchise agreement and an FDD and all of that. Right. It felt easy, but you quickly get different problems you didn't anticipate too.
Right. What do we think? We're going to license and suddenly we're going to avoid all the problems? No.
Right.
You still have people. There are still people to help. So whether you want to call them a licensee or a franchisee, you are going to need to help them.
Yeah.
And you're giving up a lot. So I'm so curious, what was life like then when you first became a franchisor?
We didn't change that much. We really just created all of the documents and created some, requirements of how it runs. I did not even add a royalty when we first started. We just sold the booklets. We were really diehards on that model. Yeah. And, but in the end, I couldn't be the franchisor I needed to be, without the royalties. So we did end up adding it later. But it was, so we really kind of were, we were like a laid back franchise for quite a while. But we grew kind of slowly too. And I think because we didn't develop out what we needed to in those first few years, because we simply didn't have the income streams.
Sure. There's no apologies for charging a royalty. We as franchisors charge a royalty so that we can provide you with the necessary training and ongoing support. If I can't afford to provide you the support, you're going to be miserable as a franchisee in exchange for saying, I'm going to, relieve royalties. Nobody wins. I love that your mom was a franchisee. Too many of us we come in as we run a company on location and then we franchise, and we only know life as a franchisor, where, let's face it, mom, whether she was a disgruntled franchisee or not, ex-franchisee, she saw other people that were disgruntled. And sometimes it's better to know what to avoid than to know what you want, right? And so she had this great foundation.
Yeah. I mean, that was why we didn't do a royalty for a long time, was her experience and people being unhappy about it. And so she wanted to have this different business model. We were very idealistic. Mm-hmm. And it, for a little while it worked. It just didn't work to take us to the level of growth. We were going to be stagnant if we didn't add the royalty, because I couldn't add staff and support, all the support that franchises need. It takes money.
Yeah. A great point though to make is that for people that are listening to this, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, it wasn't that those franchisees were disgruntled because they were just paying a royalty. They were mad because they were paying a royalty and not getting the right support.
Right.
And promotion of the brand. That was they weren't getting value for what they expected.
Right.
And maybe even what they were told, because there was definitely a misalignment of expectation.
Right. Exactly. And to be fair, I feel like that can be a common complaint within franchising amongst franchisees. But, when we're only the franchisee perspective, we sympathize with it quite a bit.
Sure.
Now we're on the other side. I honestly understand some of the restrictions of my mom's former brand, but we still are unique. We're going to be different than them. We're going to learn lessons from her experience.
Right.
But I do understand a little bit more, because, things are required.
Absolutely. How did you guys find your first dozen franchisees? Where did they come from?
They were all parents, typically, of Gideon students. So their students come in, their child comes in, has a great experience. They really like the system. They see that it's a part-time model. We typically open about 4 p.m. and close about 7 or 8. You have some things during the day, but, there's a lot of flexibility with your mornings. And so it just looked like a great business for people to start. So that's really most of my beginning franchisees were either parents or they knew someone who was a parent.
Yeah, that is so typical. People that start out new in franchising think, okay, I've got to spend all this money in PR and the web portals and do trade shows, and those are going to be my first people. Those folks are not going to want to be your first franchisee typically. It's somebody who's had involvement with your business.
we really didn't spend any money on advertising for a long time.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Okay. Because the curriculum and getting everything down right was so important to you, when you guys did franchise, what do you think you had to do? What were the steps that you had to do to ensure that it was going to be run consistently across the franchise locations?
So that's been a little bit of a work in progress
Mm-hmm.
up until. So I did not get involved with the franchise community and kind of understand franchising until about 2020. Then I really kind of started learning what's normal, how are things done at other brands, and kind of best practices. So I'd say since then we've improved astronomically relative to the first few years. The first few years we were just kind of almost developing out all the operation manuals together.
Right.
We did a lot of stuff by we have an kind of an easy system of the booklets, but like on terms of more of the soft skills, talking to parents and selling, that was just kind of being slowly developed. So it's like once we hit 2020 and I started learning how other brands do it, it went a lot faster, a whole lot better.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It sounds like you guys really, really wanted to start out being hands
Yeah.
off. And
Hmm.
once you find out that the other brands, what really makes the brand succeed is, yes, there is hands off. We treat each franchise owner as they're independently owned and operated, but there is truly this level of commitment that we're making to them and to one another. It is the ecosystem of franchising is just, it's what makes it work. That relationship can be very trying at times,
Yes.
but as long as we're rowing in the same direction. I always like to say that when I was running my brand, we definitely did not always agree on everything. But I thought that as a network, we always agreed that we were going in the right direction. We agreed on the direction. Maybe we didn't always agree on the methods that needed to be taken. But that's the beauty of franchising, is that push-pull that made us so much stronger. And isn't it better than just being yes to death by people? Because you don't want to be
Gosh.
yes to
Yeah.
death. You feel like, what are my blind spots? Like, somebody tell me something. Don't be afraid to tell me what we need to do differently.
Yeah, and we've gotten so many great ideas from our franchisees. And as of course we can't do them all.
Right.
We have a budget, we have so much. But a lot of our best stuff, back in the day, I had one of my early franchisees kept telling me, you got to update your website. This is outdated.
Right.
And I agreed with her. I just wasn't sure the best method to go about it. Should I do it myself? Should we hire someone? And so we pushed back a little bit, but in the end, she pushed me enough that I did update the website and it was much, much better. And I was glad she pushed me on that because I might have let it go.
Right.
This was like 10 years ago, to be fair, when it
Okay.
wasn't still important, but it wasn't like it is now.
Yeah.
So
Stephanie, so who is your ideal franchise owner? If you could share with us, who do you look for?
we actually say is you're not in the education business as much as you're in the relationship business.
Mm,
You are developing relationships with these students and their families, and then eventually their neighbors and their cousins and all this. So you primarily need to be somebody who wants to develop relationships. So if you were looking to just sit in the back office and not be involved, you're probably not our best candidate.
mhm.
If you don't want to walk in the doors at all, we are owner operated, still not a great candidate. So we
Right.
want people that really want to get involved with the community and with the parents and the students. And then secondly, we because we have a lot of people who don't come from education, but we need people that are kind of passionate about the power of education. Because we have mastery standards to kind of ensure that the integrity of the program is being met. So there can be pressure from parents that are ready to move faster and keep moving on. But you're like the education coach. You know what's best. They need to do that drill one more time
Right.
to get it right. Right. It's just like in sports. It's just like in instruments. But parents can get anxious because the schools are saying the child's behind. We need to move on, or they want to hit grade level, but you need to kind of be convicted that this program works properly when done properly.
Mhm.
So I don't want people that will cave and bypass the system because then the integrity of the program gets lost.
Totally. And I get it. You want them to be owner operated. You want them to be involved. What's your feeling on full-time commitment versus part-time?
So we do allow part-time. We have a lot of people that have a full-time job. We have noticed that typically our top performers are full-timers.
Mhm.
So that's the ideal, is if you can give it your full focus. We're not requiring that at this time.
Mhm.
Who knows where we'll be in 5 to 10 years. But full-time, you're going to probably grow a little faster. You just have more time to market, more time to call people back, a lot more opportunity to grow the business than if you could only work it part-time.
Okay. I'm curious, of the 22 franchises open, what do you think the split is between full-time and part-time franchises?
That's a great question. I'm going to say somewhere around 50-50.
Okay.
It may be a little bit higher with full-time jobs at the moment. I think we've got some that haven't opened yet, and I don't think they have full-time jobs. So that'll go, switch it up a little bit.
Okay.
But
Is there maybe an example of a franchisee that you'd like to share that maybe exceeded expectations? And what do they do to achieve the success?
that's a great question. So I would say one of the ones that has just done us just amazing is our new location in Salina, which is a new suburb here in Dallas, or north of Dallas, really fairly north of Dallas. Dallas
Okay.
is expanding.
It sure is.
She just shot out of the bank. I mean, shot out of the gun, whatever the phrase is,
Yeah.
right away. We found a great spot for her close to the road, and they moved on it quickly. We've been just really in sync with her and her growth. And I think she just got into the neighborhoods and made sure her presence was known. She devotes it full time too.
Not surprised.
Yeah, she won top newcomer of the year last year because she just broke all the records for a first year center. So she's done amazing. It's been really fun to watch.
She really understood the importance of the community awareness of Gideon,
Yes.
huh?
Yeah, and she was a former parent, of course.
Of course.
That it doesn't have to be, but that makes it fun too, right? She's taking what she gained and she's passing it along to other children and other families. So that's been fun, that she sees it. We always tell people, if you have a child, they need to be enrolled, or if they weren't, you ought to, get them involved, because you telling your children's story is going to impact the people that come in to see you.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I meant to ask you earlier, I forgot. Where did the name come from?
It's from the Christian Bible. My father was a prayerful man and we felt led to do this, and he felt like this was the name the Lord gave him to name it. So here we are.
Sweet. That's beautiful. Great tribute to the man as well. Yeah, for sure. What is the investment range for the franchise opportunity?
So typically all in, it's anywhere from like 150 to 220. The main range is just kind of build out cost, first gen versus second gen, or maybe a rent could be higher, in certain locales versus maybe Dallas. But, a lot of our centers in Texas are usually all in for about 150. But we have the range mainly just to account for other cities.
Okay. I'm curious about like the territory protection, like how far apart do you try to keep locations from each other?
We guarantee a 10-minute drive time via something like Google Maps. That's what we use, assuming Google will be around forever. Hopefully we don't have to switch mapping. But yeah, we do a 10-minute drive time to make sure that there's a nice distance between them, and they're guaranteed we won't place another center within that.
Okay. All right. Back to franchising again. Stephanie, what's been your biggest surprise since being a franchisor?
First, it's harder than I realized.
Sure.
Maybe because publishing and just being a publisher and a licensee, we had our issues, but it didn't require that much of us. We either solved it or we didn't with the licensing, and you solve it by becoming a franchise.
Yeah, you did. Yes.
So franchising can be tricky. I think the other part was, once I got involved with the community, how wonderful the community is.
Yeah.
How giving, how helpful. Everybody's got tips. I'm in a couple groups and masterminds, and everyone really wants to share, even when it's not exactly like my competitor, but it's similar industries. People want to help. Maybe because franchising is tricky, we all want to help each other. I'm not sure.
I think that you might be onto something there.
But that was I did not realize the whole thing that was out there. I don't even think I knew what IFA was, back in 2012. I read a few books, and we engaged our lawyer, and we just kind of got started, as rough as it was. And then around 2020 is when I got involved with the community and started learning best practices. And I feel like we're polishing everything up now.
Yeah. I don't think that there's an industry that hasn't franchised yet. And it's unnecessary to go at it alone. Somebody has probably done it. The old phrase, success leaves clues. And with the community being so generous, it's just silly to not be involved and find out what others are doing and the mistakes they've made. So you don't make them yourself. I don't know about you, but when I franchised, I literally had one shot at this. Like if it failed, I was going to be out of money and I don't know what I would have done. I didn't have a plan B. So when you have only one shot and most of us only have one opportunity to make something work of this magnitude, you got to do whatever it takes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, I was just telling someone recently, we burned the ships a while ago.
Absolutely.
This is my full income stream. This has to work.
Yeah. Is this, it's been a legacy business for you all. Do you see this being a legacy business for you all long-term, or do you see a window of time before you exit, sell, or do something else? What do you think?
So I kind of joke that my exit strategy is death. I don't see myself leaving. Now I know that sounds morbid, but
No.
I mean, there's a lot of talk, as you know, private equity getting involved in brands, and I'll never say never, because there was a time when I said I would never franchise, and look at me now.
You learned.
So exactly, but I don't have a plan for bringing in private equity. I would kind of like to stay family owned if we can. We're not in a hurry. I don't have, that we have to hit a certain mark at a certain point. We're just looking for the right people.
Good for you.
And as they come to us, we will grow. And if we got a little stagnant, that's okay too. We'll figure it out. But I don't want to make any drastic changes. To be honest, I've been self-employed for like 20 years. And so it's hard to want to bring on somebody else, having me where I have to answer to someone. So
good for you.
I would like to maybe continue that, but we'll see. Who knows? I may regret these.
Well, I don't think so. Stephanie, there are certainly pros and cons of working with private equity. And I know probably when this airs, you'll probably start getting even more phone calls about, hey, join our platform because, and they'll give you A through Z of all the reasons why you'll still be in control. But let's face it, anytime you have an investor and they have a vested interest, they've put money into it, they are going to have a say at something, at some point. But it's not for everybody. And every PE, I will never just, I can't just blanket across, say every private equity experience is the same. That is not true at all. There are all different private equity. There's good, bad, and ugly, and like in any business.
Right, of course. I have. Sorry, I was going to say, I have a franchisor friend who has a private equity partner. It's had a great experience.
Yeah.
I don't mean to say, oh, this is how it goes. It's just kind of a personal preference, I think, at this point.
Sure. Well, the reason why I bring it up to you is because I sense from obviously talking to you and from your brand being around for so long that you don't have that inherent pressure that franchisors typically do to selling lots of franchises to keep the doors open. You're not trying to just keep the lights on by selling as many franchises. I mean, you have 22, which is great, but you're not saying I need to sell 50 next year.
No, not at all. No, I don't even want to grow that fast. That doesn't sound like quality to me based on how we operate. That's too fast for us. I know there's other brands that would do amazing at that, but that would be too fast. I tell people we're probably not going to get to 1,000 centers. That's not really the goal. Our goal is to just bring on quality people and grow at the rate that makes sense. So my brother does the franchise sales, and I say, if you bring me quality, like we have goals, we'd like to sell 10 this year.
Okay.
But I was like, if you bring me 15 amazing people, I'm not going to say no to the extra 5. We'll figure out onboarding and we'll hire another person, but I'm not going to say yes just to get to the 10 either. It's got to be the right people. If you bring on the wrong people, you're simply pushing the problem down the road.
I agree. I always say pay now or pay later.
Correct.
If you take on the wrong person now and you get that franchise fee, you are going to pay like 10x in the damage that you're going to need to get that person out.
Exactly. So especially when we were licensing, we kind of brought on people that we would not bring on now.
Of course, you were licensing.
And they didn't want to operate it, and just different reasons, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just not the right fit. But we actually learned quite a few lessons just in licensing and choosing. So that's been helpful.
I bet. It must be pretty cool though, having your brother selling the franchises.
Yeah, it's fun. We have a good time.
That's great. Stephanie, what trends are you seeing in the industry? What changes are going on right now?
A lot of digital,
Sure.
I'm pretty sure all my competitors have a digital component. To be honest, we don't have an interest in going that way at this moment.
Hmm.
The research for education really shows pencil and paper, in working with your hand and the movement is what causes those wonderful memories and going from short term to long term. So that's really our focus, just to stay a little bit techless
Yeah.
with students. But then, of course, on the business side, get more involved with tech, make business even easier and faster and efficient, and to use tech that way.
Interesting you said that. I've learned through some of the personal development seminars and conferences I've been to over the years that very approach of writing something down, our retention goes up. That's like a crazy number, like 90% versus even just typing on the iPad or, putting something on our phone like in notes, that it's dramatically better.
Yes, exactly. So I feel like everybody feels like they're missing out if they don't have it. And so
Yeah.
I understand, but number one, we're small. So putting resources to that would not be wise, in my opinion. And number two, what we do really works well. And we find parents are really kind of teched out. Like they
Hmm.
don't want their kid on more screens and more iPad. That's never been a request that I know of, definitely at the company store, but I'm not even hearing that from franchisees where parents say, "Oh, can we get it on tech? Can we get it on the iPad?" It's like I feel like COVID was like overkill with all of that, and then
Right.
ever since then, parents are like, "Please, just bring in paper. I want paper."
Yeah. I'm curious. I want to go back to the expansion of the business, and you're in 5 states right now. How do you evaluate and select potential new markets? Where are you guys most interested in going?
Houston is where we're really interested right now.
Hmm.
It's a lot of similarities to Dallas and a lot of room to grow. So we have a big focus on Houston right now. We can also service it really well because it's only a short drive down there if we needed to, last minute. Austin as well, San Antonio maybe a little bit. So we're focused kind of on Texas just to build our base a little bit stronger. We don't turn down people from other states. I would say DC area is our other main interest. We have some centers out there already, and so we'll continue to develop that one. We're trying to kind of make sure we're not spread too thin. We had gotten I got the registered in California, but I've decided I want to pull back. I don't want to go out to California. There's a lot of great opportunity.
Right.
There's a lot of franchising restrictions too, as you know, with California. And really, it came down to, are we going to spread ourselves too thin by putting a lot of people out in California, or just a few? So
Sure.
I want to kind of stay closer to home, a little for a few more years. The next couple of years, strong
Good
focus.
for you. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think if I was in your position right now and you're trying to grow this thing out organically, there is no reason to go to California.
Right.
We don't need
And
it.
you get interest from a state, and you
Of
kind of go,
course.
okay, let's see. And we went through the exercise, we got through, but
Right.
in the end, it worked out. The candidate, didn't follow through. And honestly, I was kind of glad. Like, I don't think
Hmm.
I want to pursue California right now. Who knows where we'll be in 3 years?
Sure.
And maybe we'll have grown enough. But today, let's just stick with Texas as our main focus. Of course, Oklahoma, Arkansas, everything's up for grabs. And obviously Virginia, and we have one in Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
If we have good candidates in places that make sense, we're not opposed to it. It's just, we're trying to be wise, I suppose, with our resources.
Yeah. You brought up an interesting challenge that franchisors we all face, and that is getting lulled into the excitement of expansion because
Yeah.
somebody called you from that area, which is the exact opposite reason why we should ever go into a state.
Exactly. Our industry is pretty big in California. So my brother really wants to get out there and just go gangbusters.
Sure.
But there's other challenges, of course, with California. And really I just started thinking about every visit is going to cost this much,
True.
and we're still low staffed, and we're staffing up as we grow right now, but we're not ready for field visits really out there on the regular. So
Yeah. And I've heard of many franchisors that have gone international because they got an inquiry from that country, which I think is insane reason why you would ever go into a country. I mean, if you wanted to go into Canada, decide to go into Canada, not because you got a call from Toronto. That's not a good reason to expand into Canada. Stephanie, let's talk about the due diligence process, because you are careful, and I know your brother's very careful about bringing you the right people into the organization. What's some of the advice do you think that he gives or you give to people when they're looking at becoming a franchisee?
We go through an 8-step process developed by essentially some fran development consultants that we hired, and we're part of their group. And they really trained us on, this is how you need to get to know people.
Mm-hmm.
You need to know, why are they doing this? What is the motivation? And to be honest, sometimes I still feel like we have more digging to do. Like we can go deeper with people, but you really need to understand why are they wanting to go do this? Because when things get hard, we need, it's you have ups and downs with any business.
Right.
What is the purpose of you being here? So that's really important to us.
I like that.
We want to make sure, because, there's a million businesses you can do. Some, have even higher profit margins than education learning centers. So if it's just money, are we the right concept? Are we the right business? Just because we're local and us, you really need to like children and want to be around them and want to interact. Not
Right.
everybody does.
Sure.
And that's okay. But we are the wrong business, So we try to really give them the reality of what it looks like running this successfully,
Mm-hmm.
because if you're not physically there and you've let somebody else run it, which is against our franchise agreement anyway, the parents start to see this, that you're not invested in this business. And this is so precious to them, right? This is like the most important thing. And you can't it's not like maybe like an ice cream shop where you can enjoy it for one off and maybe you come back, maybe you don't. This is like their education. They're really thinking about the decisions and who is in charge. So we want people that are serious and that are not, flaky, and they need to, really be kind of convicted that this is the right business for them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I always said to my franchise network, what I was looking for? I was looking for PhDs, people that are passionate, hungry, and driven.
Yes, exactly.
That's your winning franchisee, because if they're just motivated by money, that's gonna the optics are so bad, because it's so obvious when somebody's driven purely for money, especially when they're working in the child-related business.
Yes, and it's amplified.
Oh my gosh. And you have to be passionate about it. And you have to be hungry, because we have to withstand the bad times in any business. I don't care what franchise, what business you go into, you're going to have, it's going to be a slow go when you're starting out. So you better be really, hungry and driven in that. I'm curious, Stephanie, is there maybe a piece of memorable advice that maybe your mom gave, about the business, and maybe something that's influenced your decisions now as the CEO of the company?
Really, my father did. He sat me down in college once, and I don't remember what the context was, but he said, everybody's going to disappoint you. And it sounds very negative, but it's just a reminder that everyone's human. They're not perfect. And I remind myself, I've probably disappointed everybody as well. And so it keeps you humble. And when you get frustrated, you remind yourself, this is life. People make mistakes, you make mistakes. And so forgive, that's a big piece, and relax and kind of roll with whatever it is and try to keep moving.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. If we expect people to behave the way we want them to behave, we are going to be disappointed 100% of the time.
Exactly. I say sometimes franchising is like herding cats, occasionally, and it just is what it is. It's I just figure you do your best. And that's the beauty of the community too, is you realize this is pretty common in different areas, You're
Oh, totally. This is not about Gideon at all. No, this is any franchise system, of course. What's your take? I'm curious, what is your take on then this weird balance between wanting a franchise owner to be entrepreneurial yet following a system? Because it's kind of, you kind of want both.
Yeah. It is tricky, because if they're super confident in everything, then they will also kind of go their own way sometimes. And I have had those experiences. Sometimes, people that are really great in one area struggle to follow the system in another, And so it's still a good balance, because we can't have people that are so unconfident as well.
Yeah.
I'm not at the point where I can completely train you to be everything I need you to be. I don't know what group it was or where I heard this, but somebody really big in franchising once said, the franchisees you take on at like number 10
Mhm.
may be different than the ones you take on at number 100, or you're
Totally.
able to take on. So yeah, like at franchisee 100, I'll probably have systems for everything and I can train you to do everything. But right now, I still need you to have that confidence. So it is a
Right.
balance. To be honest, we use Zoracle profiles and we
Mhm.
kind of look at all of that, and we're looking for that balance as opposed to extreme in one area or the other.
Yeah, and that's spot on. By the way, that your 10th franchise owner will look totally different than your 100th. The reason why your 100th waited to be 100 is because they wanted to have enough confidence that you had the systems and processes. They're not a risk taker. Number 10 was a risk taker. Number 1 definitely was.
Yes, exactly. What's hard is when your number 10 expects you to have all the systems like you like
Ah,
you have 100.
that is right.
That's been a challenge as
Of
well,
course.
but we're getting there.
Yeah, of course. Stephanie, this has been great. I've enjoyed our conversation. If someone was interested in learning more about Gideon Math and Reading Centers, where would they go?
GideonFranchise.com, GIDEON franchise.com. And take a look around, and just if you submit the form, we will be in touch. I promise that form doesn't go into the ether. We will call you.
Sweet. All right. I always finish every episode with the franchise tip jar because, as you said earlier, the community is so generous. So
Yes.
is there maybe a piece of advice that you would give me if I was an entrepreneur looking to franchise my concept? So before I go into it, what's something you tell me I need to do?
I would go to the IFA Emerging Franchisor Conference and some of the smaller ones. The
Sweet.
big one's amazing. I've done that a couple times, but the small ones I feel are easier to connect with people and really get to talk to other small franchisors or just emerging or people who are thinking about it. And they're really geared towards teaching you best practices and how to set things up and avoid some of the mistakes I have made, such as licensing. So I really think those smaller conferences. I'm going to Springboard this year. I had never gone before, but I've heard great things.
It is fantastic.
Yeah, and even the FBR Summit.
Mhm.
I've gone to that a couple times, and I'll be going this year for operations piece. It's like there's so much to learn. Luckily, I like to learn, so it's fun for me. But I would have loved to have gotten best practices before I really got rolling. So
Good for you.
that
That's
is
great.
my advice.
That is great advice. So for those that are listening out there, Franchise Springboard is typically in September each year in Philadelphia. The Emerging Franchisor Conference, which is led by the IFA, does move from year to year, but it is typically in November. I know they move locations.
It's in Austin this year.
It's in Austin in 2024. Sweet. Well, I will see you at Franchise Springboard in September for sure. And
Awesome.
Look forward to meeting you, Stephanie. Thanks so much. I appreciate being on the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. This was so fun.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.